On November 22nd, 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald was charged with assassinating President Kennedy. 2 days later, Oswald was killed. So the big question remains, lone gunman or Patsy?
You think Oswald acted alone? You think it was a conspiracy, or you think he was a patsy?
I think he's probably the guy. I think there were some guys behind him, though.
Do you think he was a lone gunman?
If he did it, yes. But I really don't think he did it, so then no.
I think there were two gunmen at least.
You think there were two lone gunmen?
I think there could have been some conspiracy going on there.
How many lone gunmen can be together before they're not lone? Do you remember where you were when JFK was shot?
No. No.
Where do you think you were?
With my mom.
Why haven't we heard this before? You expect people to believe that? Who could mastermind that kind of cover-up? Okay, you two, break it up. Oh, so you're serious. Come on, convince me.
This is the Conspiracy Zone, the show that sees things from more sides than Picasso. Now here's your host, Kevin Nealon.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the show. Tonight's question is one we've all asked ourselves 1,000 times. Did Lee Harvey Oswald kill John Kennedy? It's more than a who done it. We know where done it and when done it, but not how done it, why done it, and how many done it. Now, personally, I like jelly donuts, but that's just me. Now, over the years, I've read a lot of books and articles covering all the different assassination theories, so I can tell you I am more confused than ever right now. But I know our panel has all the answers, so let's meet them. First, we have the author of the groundbreaking JFK assassination book, Best Evidence. He's currently finishing a biography of Oswald. Please welcome David Lifton. Hi, David. So, David, what's your best evidence?
Oswald didn't shoot anybody on November 22nd. He was completely innocent. Appearances to the contrary are the result of manipulation. The most important thing to know about Oswald is how intelligent he was and that he's a fake red. I repeat that, a fake red. He was a fake red when he went to the Soviet Union for our government in October '59 when he was 20, and when he came back in June '62 at age 22 and a half, he was continuing with some kind of intelligence assignment, and he got himself entrapped and set up as the Patsy in the Kennedy assassination. All right. Our second gunman is the author of Conspiracies, Cover-Ups, and Crimes, and the 70 Greatest Conspiracies of All Time. Please greet Jonathan Bankin. Jonathan, the key word in those titles is conspiracies. Yes. With JFK too?
Absolutely, absolutely. And as far as Oswald is concerned, I think he was born to be a patsy. I think that he was the type of person who was sort of a seeker, always sort of looking for his place in the world. And I think this made him very easy to manipulate. I don't think he ever really wanted to kill anyone, certainly not JFK, who he actually admired. But you know, he wanted to be connected with something important. And I don't necessarily think he was a fake red. I think he was looking for a cause, and communism at the time seemed like a great cause to him. It would really draw attention to himself. Right. So in the final analysis, there's no evidence, I think, that he killed anyone that day, but he was really the type of person who, you know, a pawn could use him as a pawn.
Just set up.
Just set up.
All right. You know our third panelist as the creator and star of the hit TV show Welcome Back, Kotter. Over the past 6 months, he's returned to stand-up comedy and is currently on tour. Please welcome Gabe Kaplan. Gabe, as a comedian, you work alone. You think Oswald worked alone?
We had a charismatic, virile, handsome president. It's hard for us to believe that someone as insignificant as Lee Harvey Oswald took him away from us, because if Lee Harvey Oswald can kill John Kennedy, how valuable are our lives? You know, there's been several conspiracies. Some say that the Cubans did it. Some say the anti-Cubans did it. Some say the Russians did it, the mob. Rogue elements in the CIA, the FBI. There's all these different theories, and then there's Oliver Stone who throws them all together and says they all did it in a movie. It's like a weekend at Oliver Stone's house. You know? So it's like, I would like these gentlemen to, tonight, give us some new material other than what we've heard for 38 years, and name some names and give us some difference.
Do you think you could do that? Can you convince them in a few seconds?
Not in a few seconds, you know. But I would point out that there's evidence that the autopsy of President Kennedy was falsified, to me, is really massive, starting with an FBI report that says that when the president's body arrived, it was, quote, apparent there had been surgery of the head area. And when you get into
What
that...
do you mean surgery of the head area?
I mean, a craniotomy prior to the autopsy, which is why the FBI...
There was no wounds in his head?
There was wounds in his head, but the Dallas version of the wounds is hundreds of % different than the Bethesda version of the wounds, and that's why you have these conflicts in the testimony.
They were bigger in Bethesda?
Hugely bigger, and the doctors were positive they could find no bullets.
I saw 20 times. I saw 20 times his head getting blown off in the film. It
those are repeats.
Oh, those are repeats,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like the top of his head was completely blown off.
Not in Dallas, it wasn't. When he was brought into the hospital...
That's what we all saw in the Zapruder film.
Right. In Dallas, when the 13 doctors and nurses saw him and wrote their reports, there's an exit wound at the back of the head. That's a shot from the front. And the same thing with the throat wound. There was an entry at the front of the throat.
So that massive wound that we saw didn't happen.
I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm going to say to you that that leads to another area of the validity and the authenticity of the Zapruder film.
What area? Either his head was blown almost completely off.
We're going to find that out later, Gabe. Okay. Sounds like the work of a fake red to me. All right. This motorcade has to stop for a break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Never heard of the man.
He assassinated Kennedy.
Can you demonstrate the path of the magic bullet?
It came through here.
Went boom, and then...
Came down through a wrist.
Through a photomat, back, and then left.
To the left.
Why would Oswald run into a movie theater after the movie started already?
What was playing?
Back in the zone, and yes, we were talking about you while you were gone. Was Lee Harvey Oswald the lone gunman? That's our question. So let me ask you, David, in relation to Kennedy, where does the Oswald story begin?
The Oswald story begins in October 1959 when, getting through the 3-year hitch, he goes to Russia for the CIA. That's when it begins. He stays in Russia for 2.5 years and comes back in June '62. When he comes back, he has a wife and a child, and he wants to resume life and go to college. But he is apparently told, no, you can't do that yet. Keep pretending to be a Red. And the evidence that it's a pretend act, you can tell it from his reading. His favorite book, favorite author is George Orwell. 1984 is his favorite book. Animal Farm. If he's really a Marxist would not join the Marines. The Marines were not created to make the world safe for socialism. And he's joining the Marines in the fall of '56 when the Hungarian Revolution is going on. If he's a Marxist, he's in the wrong army. He's on the wrong side.
Can I ask you, how do we know that the CIA sent him to the Soviet Union? I haven't heard.
The money involved indicates that it's sent to the Soviet Union, and I was told to be careful
about... What kind of money?
Huh? Well, I talk about $1,500 for him to do that at the time.
That's CIA money.
Well, he got the money from somewhere. He had no known savings account, and the accelerated discharge from the Marines is part of the story about how he gets over there, and then the extraordinary violations of bureaucratic procedure to get him back in June '62 to get Marina in, even though she's the wife of a defector.
Marina's her...
Marina, right. And they had to do a special waiver of something called Rule 243G. At the top of the government, you have the assistant, number 3 man in INS meeting with
Maybe his wife just nagged him into shooting Kennedy.
I don't think that's the way it is.
So I'd like some names. You say the CIA sent him to Russia. How do you know that? Who sent him to Russia? Who in the CIA
He went over to Russia, and this will be in my book, Final Charade, next year.
So we can't know now. It's going to be in your book.
He went to Russia in connection with the YouTube program.
Who sent him in the CIA?
CIA, right?
CIA, I know. CIA.
Right.
Who in the CIA?
Who was the guy? Who was Mr. Big?
Who was the guy?
The top 3 guys in the CIA ran the YouTube program. You're talking about Dulles. You're talking about
So Alan Dulles sent him to... Alan Dulles recruited...
It's not a crime to send Oswald to Russia. He was
Lee Harvey Oswald was a 19-year-old high school dropout. When he went to Russia, he was 19. He was a high school dropout.
How many languages do you know?
I
just like to know how many languages do you know.
I'm not talking about language.
He taught himself
I'm talking about Lee Harvey Oswald being a 19-year-old dropout. He was court-martialed twice in the Marines.
Fluent in Russian.
He had a questionable... He wasn't fluent in Russian.
Yes, he was fluent in Russian.
All the people that knew him in Russia, except you and the 3 CIA guys who sent him to Russia, say that he spoke terrible Russian.
No, he came back.
They interviewed
Sir,
50
But just
in the
because he
Warren
spoke
Commission
Russian
report-
doesn't mean he's working for the CIA.
No, of course not. I'm trying to show his intelligence. He was extremely smart. He was gifted.
He was smart. He was a very smart man.
Spoke Russian with a perfect accent by the time he got home.
Yeah,
perfect.
but the people who talked to him, who knew him in Russia, who spent time with him, said he spoke terrible Russian.
I've spoken to those people. I've spoken to Ernst Titowitz. He said he was fine in Russian. He got better. Anybody has a learning curve. Have you ever tried to get a Berlitz tape and teach yourself Russian?
Yes.
How long did it take you to get
Right after Swahili. I went right into Russian.
How long did it take for Swahili?
Swahili took 3 days. Russian took a little longer.
Well, how was Oswald prepped for the assassination? Why was he just not associated with the CIA?
Well, I know a lot about this. His father died 2 months before he was born. Him and his brothers were shuffled in and out of orphanages. His mother had him home the most. She babied him. She made him sleep with her till he was 12 years old.
Sorry, wrong. He slept in the same bed for 18 months during a period of economic hardship.
I think
I don't think it was a great idea, but
The CIA made him sleep with his mother?
No.
We can agree that
Which 3 guys in the CIA made him sleep with his mother?
Can we agree that he had a troubled
8
childhood?
years old.
He definitely had a troubled childhood.
Very troubled.
I want to ask you, Gabe, what was his motive to kill the president?
He wanted to get his own bed. He was tired of sleeping with his mother.
His time frame mixed up
I
here.
mean, when you take a lone nut, you know, who knows what their motive is?
This guy's 1949 mixed up with 1963. That's when he slept with his in the same bed.
But this is another problem. This is another problem here. Is that there's this assumption on the part of the people who like to say he was a lone nut that he was somehow insane or mentally unstable. All those diagnoses have been carried out after he was dead. While he was alive, he was psychologically evaluated in the Marine Corps. He was evaluated in the Soviet Union and New York City. No one ever found any mental instability or insanity or anything that would indicate that he was going to kill anybody.
Well, let's talk about him shooting the rifle. Could he have fired all those shots?
Could he have?
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean,
but he
there's been
didn't.
tests, right?
Not if the autopsy was falsified. He didn't.
There was a paraffin test done on the same day that indicated that that's a test to show if you have gunpowder residue on your hand or on your face, which is where it's going to be if you're shooting a rifle like that. He didn't have any on his face, which indicated.
And there were no handy wipes back then.
He actually, but it showed that he had some on his hand, but not on his face. So the Warren Commission decided that test was unreliable.
Well, maybe he washed his face without using his hands.
Maybe.
And then he yells out that he's innocent, that he's a patsy. And who does he ask for? Not a criminal attorney. He asks for John Abt, who represents the communists in court trials. I mean, that is so totally provocative.
Well, he's up on Russian things like that because he spent so much time there. He probably knows that this guy represents Russians.
Yeah, but you're not in homicide cases. You're talking about civil liberties. If you're accused of murder, you don't ask for an insurance attorney, you know?
So how many shooters were there then?
I think probably 2 or 3 shooters.
You know, there's
so
many different theories of how many shooters there were. If every conspiracy theory had some basis, there was like 500 different people. No wonder it was tough to get a room in Dallas at the time because all these assassins, it was like an assassins convention.
They had a shooter special that week.
Yeah, a shooter special that week.
Hey, we got to take a break here to reload. When we come back, we'll have a material witness with inside information on the mob connection to all this. We haven't talked about that yet. Welcome back. No Mystery Story is complete without a surprise witness, and we got a great one. He's the author of the autobiography Bound by Honor, A Mafioso's Life, and was the inspiration for Michael Corleone. He's long retired, but we pulled him back in. Please welcome Bill Bonanno. Hi, Bill. Hi. Bill, what's the connection between the Kennedy family and the Mafia families?
Well, Kennedys and people in what I like to refer to as my world go way back, way back. In a grasp for power, you have to make a lot of friends in a lot of different walks of life. And that's what Sr. did. That's what Joe Kennedy did. And he called in his markers 30, 40 years later.
Yeah.
That's what the connection was.
That's where it
started out with during Prohibition. The government's gift to people in my world, Prohibition.
What about Ruby? Was he involved with your world?
Ruby, I mean, everybody knew who Jack Ruby was in our world. Giancana out of Chicago wore Ruby like a pinky ring. And this nonsense of, you know, I'm killing Oswald so that Jackie Kennedy doesn't have to come here and testify. A lot of nonsense.
Here's the big question. Who actually fired the shots?
information that I have that came into my possession was that one of the persons that fired a shot was a fellow by the name of Johnny Roselli, who told me at Terminal Island on an afternoon in the yard.
He's part of your world.
He's part of our world. He's with the Chicago group.
You don't call them the mob or the mafia or anything?
Well, I use the term my world to differentiate from the world that I came from and what's out there today, because what's out there today is nothing more than the parody of what used to be.
Bunch of pansies.
So I try to I try to differentiate by saying my world.
Right.
But one day in the yard, Johnny made a few remarks when a few Cubans were around, and I was getting a little nervous because he was talking a little too much out of school, and he said, well, you know, he says, I was in the sewer, I was in the drain. He says, they were supposed to get a car to pick me up down at the Trinity River. It was my shot.
He was in the sewer in Dealey Plaza?
In the drain. After he fired his shot, he went through the labyrinth of tunnels that were under there, and he went to the Trinity River. It took him about 23 minutes, he says.
So he fired the shot from the sewer?
From the sewer. Then he came out at the Trinity River where he was supposed to be picked up.
Nobody picked him up?
Nobody picked him up, and that's what he was pissed off about. His last remark was that Jack Ruby had more loyalty than my people in Chicago.
Wow. So what do you guys think about that?
Why would you have a guy like John Roselli, who's 57 years old at the time, I think? I mean, is he going to have the steadiest hand in the world? I mean, I don't think Roselli was ever known as a marksman in particular.
He started out as being one of the suspects in the St. Valentine's Day massacre.
A long time
ago. And I'll tell you one thing from my own point of view. If I were going to do something, I'd want Johnny with me.
Well, my feeling about the mob is the mob didn't have the body. The mob didn't plan the parade.
Careful now, be careful.
The mob didn't plan the parade. The mob didn't do the seating in the car. The mob didn't have the windshield. The mob didn't have all the evidence that's suspect in this case. And so I don't see that the mob could really, I'm not going to say they weren't errand boys at some point or in some function, but they couldn't be the architects of anything like this.
What you got to understand, though, this wasn't just a one-shot deal. You have Cubans, you have people in our world, you have Corsicans, and you got some Frenchmen that were all involved in one form or another. Because I don't know if in your research you found that there was supposed to be, the original hit was supposed to be at the Orange Bowl in Miami. When you set up an assassination, you don't just send out one team. You send out, I think it's 4, according to the manual.
Yeah, we like to send out 4, typically, unless it's tight.
And whoever gets there first, gets there first.
Now in your world, did you ever hear, people must have talked if an operation this big was going on. I mean, there must have been rumors that, did you ever pick anything up like that? Prior to this, or after?
And the reason for that is that there's a misconception about our world, that it's all one big thing from the top down, and it doesn't work that way.
Well, how come in all these wiretaps, when these people were incriminating themselves, they acted like they knew nothing about the assassination? They all talked about that they were just as curious about it as everybody else, while giving incriminating evidence against themselves.
Maybe they were just too damn smart.
They weren't smart, because they were incriminating themselves.
When I say smart, you've got to remember this was a momentous